Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, Chief Constable Andy Marsh.
Hello.
And myself, Police and Crime Commissioner Sue Mountstevens. And as you can see, we're in the sunshine outside Police and Fire headquarters. And I think on sunny days like this, it makes it even harder, doesn't it, that we're in lockdown. So today, before I begin, I just want to reflect for a few moments on the story of Stephen Lawrence. So on this day in 1993, Stephen was tragically murdered in a totally unprovoked racist attack. And his tragic story has made an amazing amount of difference to the way that the police, the courts, the whole of the criminal justice system have learnt the lessons. And while our lives continue to be occupied by coronavirus, it's really important that we take just a few seconds to commemorate Stephen's tragic death and reflect on how far as a society we have come. And we have come a long way, but we must never be complacent. We must never have such a tragedy ever happening again. And I suppose through this coronavirus that we're seeing the strength of our communities. And that's one of the things that we need to learn also from the tragedy of Stephen. So, Andy, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just on the issue of the Stephen Lawrence Memorial Day, Sue. Stephen's murder happened in 1992. I joined the police in 1987, and Stephen's murder and the inquiry that followed has created an indelible mark on the service over that time, and is one of those issues that I will remember for the whole of my service. And because of Stephen, we deal with stop search in a much more rigorous, intrusive way, how it's scrutinised externally. Because of Stephen, we take hate crime much more seriously, and we want to be the best in the world at hate crime. And because of Stephen, we're working towards a representative workforce. And actually one of my commitments to you as PCC, because it's written large in the Police and Crime Plan, is that we want to become one of the most representative and inclusive police forces in the world. And that's why inclusion is one of our 4 values. So I think it's important on Stephen Lawrence Day to say what we've done but also refresh our commitment, what we're going to do in the future because. So it's an important day. We're recruiting hundreds of new recruits at the moment, police officers and PCS. So even whilst we're in lockdown, that process is continuing. Actually, I make a commitment today that we will refresh Stephen's story to all of those new recruits so they can help us in the challenges and remember them.
And that is his legacy, isn't it?
It is.
That we are still making changes right now.
It is. There's a lot of material on our internal pocketbook communications today, speaking to staff and officers, and we've been putting a lot of external material out, and we're taking other ways with our Black Police Association and other partners to remember why it's such an important day.
Thank you, Andy. So let's just look at some of the questions that you've asked us. So the majority of local people are adhering to the government's regulations and only travelling where essential. Our roads have become increasingly quiet. However, and there's always an however, isn't there, that there are a few people that are taking real advantage of this and speeding, and that's causing a real concern to many in our community. So what are you doing, what are your officers doing to be able to tackle this particular issue?
So we try and identify issues and concerns before they actually become a real problem. So actually more than a week ago we recognised that people might be driving too quickly because of the open roads that they face. It's dangerous nevertheless, the speed limits are there for a reason. And so we worked with our operations department, specifically roads policing. We've got more patrols out on motorbikes doing speed enforcement. We've got more patrols in hotspots which we think are dangerous. And just by way of interesting statistic, since the 23rd of March we've issued over 1,000 speeding enforcement notices. As people stopped by the road and issued with tickets. So actually, if people are thinking it's okay to speed, it's not. You're probably going to get caught, apart from the fact it's very dangerous. What we're also finding is some of those that are speeding are up to other forms of misdemeanours. And actually, since the restriction on movement, we've arrested 18 burglars. We continue to bear down on drug dealers, and we're out there more, Sue, because the way that we're dealing with our demand has changed. So if you're speeding, you're going to draw some attention to yourself, and the police will be catching up with you.
I think a lot of people would be really pleased to hear that, because I think there was a feeling that the police weren't taking notice of some of those concerns. So I think the changes that you've made are really, really important, and So the message is very clear that don't speed, because the chances are you're going to get caught.
Indeed, and I think we're probably, those of us lucky enough to have come out for essential work, recognise there's cyclists on the road. So it's a general message to people, even when they're not speeding, you've got to take extra care right now, because there are people on the road in ways that they wouldn't necessarily normally have been. So I'm incredibly careful driving around at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, tomorrow, many of our Muslim communities will embark on a celebration of the holy month of Ramadan. And, you and I, we've attended Grand Iftars and an amazing sense of togetherness where families and friends really come together to celebrate and to pray. But this year is going to be very, very different. So what are you doing, first of all, to support officers, our own Muslim officers, to embarking on this Ramadan? But also, what can you say to those who are going to celebrate it very differently this year?
So the two aspects of that, it's if you're going to fast for Ramadan, it's quite a difficult time of year because the days are long. I think it's 17 hours between dawn and dusk, so that's a long time to fast. So what we're able to take for our Muslim police staff, police officers, is we would call them regional adjustments. So adjustments that make it easier for officers and staff who want to respect Ramadan and fast in that respect to take breaks, work at times that make it more appropriate to fast, and just be mindful of supportive of that. Many Muslims, because there is advice from the British Council of Mosques, many Muslims are choosing to not to fast, and so that includes some of our officers and staff. But certainly we make adjustments where we can. I spoke this morning to the chair of the Black Police Association in Avon and Somerset, who is a practicing Muslim who will be fasting, and he's very happy that we're reaching out through line managers to make those arrangements possible. Okay,
and it will be challenging for those in the community, won't it, as well, for not being able to, it will be very different to what they've had for years and years, probably as far back as they can remember.
I think different because quite often the fast is broken collectively, and prayer Indeed. 5 times a day is often conducted together. But we've seen some really, really responsible communications from the national associations, local associations and mosques about how advising people how they can undertake their fasting in a way that doesn't contravene the regulations that are there to save lives, protect the NHS and stay at home. So it's a difficult time. I think we've all got to be mindful of it. Some of the other things that I've found out over the last few days as we approach Ramadan is that there is a very strong practice of giving within our Muslim communities, and so many of the mosques are coming together to create virtually, but they're helping create food parcels through charitable donations to get them to people who are worse off, both inside the Muslim community but also outside of it as well. So what we've seen across Avon and Somerset is a really strong community coming together in a way that respects the regulations to protect lives and stop the spread of this pandemic. So I would like to say that I really appreciate the way in which they've gone about that.
Indeed. Thank you for that. So despite this pandemic that we're in, all victims must remain visible, and this week it's National Stalking Awareness Week. And I think it's really important to raise this because 75% of calls to the National Stalking Helpline are from victims who've been stalked by some sort of technological assisted. So it's not that, we know that we're not going to be stalked outside because we're not going outside, but you can still be stalked, can't you, through a matter of phones, laptops and various other things. So they will feel very much at risk. They will feel vulnerable. So how can victims report their concerns about this to the police?
So that's the problem with stalking, is it can happen in many mediums, either physical or digital and electronic, as you say. So the question, how can they report it? We would urge people that are suffering from that form of stalking to report it through 101. If you feel you're under immediate threat, report it through 999. Report it online to us. So contact us in any way that you feel appropriate to reach out to us. And in many of our local beat teams are doing Facebook-based surgeries at the moment. So there's lots of ways people can contact the police, but there are also other agencies and statutory and voluntary that can help around stalking. So what I would say is please don't suffer in silence. What will happen when you contact us is that you'll be referred to the Lighthouse safeguarding team. and that team will indeed put you in touch with other agencies that can help and make sure that we keep you informed and you empowered about what happens next whilst keeping you safe. I did do some checks actually before I came out for this Facebook Live, and what I found is that our referrals to our Lighthouse safeguarding team are above normal. Now actually that does give me some encouragement that people from different sectors, different members of the community, whether it's about domestic violence, stalking or other forms of criminality, are still getting into that Lighthouse safeguarding unit that you set up when you took up your office.
I think that it's really important that you don't have to suffer in silence, do you? That there are people out there.
Yeah, it's really important. So there's over 1,000 referrals a week. I was checking, and actually, however vulnerable you might feel, however you might feel that you're boxed in by someone who's making life unacceptably painful for you, which is even more difficult at this time. There are people that can help. We're here to help you, and I would say please report it to us.
Thank you. Now, we continue to receive a lot of emails and social media messages regarding PPE, and in fact we had a mum of a police officer message us desperate for reassurance that officers had access to PPE for their own safety. And it's really important that local people are also protected when they talk to officers. So can you give us an update about where you as an organisation is with PPE?
So this COVID-19 crisis has obviously it's happened very quickly. In the early days of the crisis, we had to work creatively, sometimes with other partners and people who are being charitable and supportive to give us PPE. We've got through those early weeks. We're now working very closely with what we call the Gold Command structure. There's a national structure that I dial into twice a week and that we're hooked into at every level of the command structure, silver and bronze. And that command structure is accessing the most relevant, the most up-to-date medical advice about the PPE that we need. And we are securing that PPE. Mm-hmm. So you hear a lot in the news about the difficult situation of different sectors accessing PPE. What I can tell you today is that we have sufficient PPE for our officers and staffs that are public facing to go about their jobs in a way that gives them the best protection we can, but also, as you pointed out, so it's really important, protects the public, because we could be spreading it just as easily as anyone else. Now the more recent developments are that we've moved more from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We're now taking a significant leading role in a Southwest procurement partnership, which is part of a national procurement partnership, and we've done our bit to underwrite a £10 million assurance for the procurement of PPE for the next 10 weeks. So we're giving our people the best possible equipment. I can understand why mums and family members, indeed some of our people, are worried, but I want to assure them that we care about the people that we work with. We want to keep them safe. We want to do our best for the public, and we've got what we need to do that.
Thank you, and I'm sure that gives assurance to many of us as mums. So thank you for joining us today. And I don't underestimate how difficult this lockdown is. I've mentioned it on days like this. I can be outside, but many of us can't be. Many of us don't have that space. And if you've got young children at home as well, and you're trying to work, it's an amazing amount of pressure. But we mustn't for one moment let up, because then we put all the hard work that we've achieved in keeping the Southwest, the safest area in the UK at the moment. So we can see there is light at the end of the tunnel. We can see glimmers of hope, but we must never be complacent. We absolutely have to continue to stay at home to keep our NHS safe. So our next Facebook Live is on the 28th of April. So if you have any questions, either contact me through social media or pcc@avonandsomerset.police.uk. So until next time, stay safe.